Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever is a sentimental farewell to Chadwick Boseman that has some standout performances from its principal cast and a brain-dead plot bookended by two sentimental T'Challa-focused scenes. Oh, this movie, man. So the movie begins with an off-camera T'Challa sick and dying due to an unspecified virus of unknown origin.
Right.
Shuri's trying to cure him by creating a synthetic version of the heart-shaped herb that gives T'Challa his Black Panther powers, but she isn't close enough yet. It's not made clear if the unspecified virus has weakened T'Challa, or has taken away his powers, or if maybe the heart-shaped herb just naturally wears off eventually, in which case they probably should have gotten on it right after Killmonger burned it all in the last movie. Like, did T'Challa's dad ever start to lose his powers while he was Black Panther? I mean, you'd think that they'd know if the stuff wears off eventually.
What are the rules?
But it's not explained, and it doesn't really matter because T'Challa dies before Shuri can replicate the herb. Queen Ramonda enters, prompting Shuri to ask for an update on T'Challa from her artificial intelligence, which speaks English and not Wakandan for some reason.
That is affirmative.
Intelligence?
The most sophisticated computer in the world.
But it informs her that T'Challa has died. The performances from Ramonda and Shuri in this scene are particularly intense and stand out as a truly unique moment in the MCU. T'Challa's death is then followed by a vibrant funeral that feels like it was meant just as much to be a celebration of the life of Chadwick Boseman as it is for the character of T'Challa. Then we have a hard cut to a black screen that leads into an all-Chadwick, silent Marvel Studios intro. It's a bold opening that acknowledges the painful reality of Chadwick's passing and the loss of this franchise's star.
Death. It's not the end. It's more of a stepping off point.
A poignant start to a movie that ultimately succumbs to a vacuous plot that meanders its way to the end due to its lack of having a true protagonist.
There's nothing here!
We then jump to a year after T'Challa's death, which is now the second and a half time they've killed this character. Once when he got snapped by Thanos, and one half when Killmonger put him in a coma that put him in ice and put him on top of a mountain. Which also raises the question that if they could keep the Winter Soldier suspended in animation, why didn't they do that for T'Challa too?
We don't do that here.
Well, anyway. Since T'Challa's burial, actually, he wasn't buried, he was abducted by a Wakandan spaceship. Since his death, we learned that T'Challa had been suffering in silence with his illness before sharing it with Shuri. Why? I have no idea, because we're not given a reason. I mean, Shuri's known to be one of the brightest minds on the planet. Why the hell wouldn't he tell her that he wasn't feeling well?
Not a great plan.
But unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman is dead in real life. God rest his soul. So it's just the way that this movie decides to handle it. Extremely close to the real life events that occurred around the making of it. And it's probably a reflection of Ryan Coogler's feelings regarding Chadwick Boseman's real life passing. The end result is that there is no longer a Black Panther in this Black Panther movie, and there won't be for the majority of it.
We don't do that here.
What we do get, though, is an angry Shuri who has given up on trying to recreate the heart-shaped herb and is burying herself in her other projects, like creating an Iron Man suit. That's a big thing in this movie. Queen Ramonda has taken over the duties of ruling Wakanda, but it's not exactly explained why no one else is challenged to rule.
What are the rules?
Maybe they just feel bad for her, but seriously, this is one of those details that feels like it was already in the script and they just didn't bother to change it.
It's in the movie done.
It makes sense if T'Challa was in this movie, maybe off defending people in need around the world, so he's left ruling Wakanda to his mom in his absence. However, in this movie, T'Challa's dead. And in the last movie, they made it seem like finding a new king is a pretty urgent task after the previous one dies.
What are the rules?
But whatever. For me, Angela Bassett is the best part of this movie, so elevating her role for more screen time is fine. After all, she's probably not going to put M'Baku in a headlock to win the right to rule, no matter how badly we all wanted to see that matchup. So anyway, we find ourselves in the UN, where Queen Ramonda is addressing a group of Western nations about Wakanda's unwillingness to share their vibranium, along with the potential resources it can provide. But I do get why the UN wants the vibranium. It's super useful for creating defenses against attacks from space, which, you know, is a thing that happens in this universe, and it can also cure most medical ailments. Hey, I said most medical ailments, but the Wakandans refuse to share.
Why?
Since the UN has access to Chitauri technology, they have some level of tech comparable to Wakanda, right? No, they don't. I mean, when we see the UN soldiers attacking the Wakandans for their vibranium, they're just using regular guns. And I realize that's a larger MCU problem, but why are they still using guns when there are clearly more advanced technologies available?
Not a great plan.
So after a bunch of, I think, French soldiers are marched out as Wakanda's proof of the attack on their resources, Queen Ramonda explains that Wakanda's readopting their isolationist policies. Based. After that, we cut to more Westerners out in the ocean with a, I kid you not, a vibranium detector.
It's in the movie Done.
That's just what it's called. Apparently, they're using it to detect vibranium and mine it from the ocean floor. And what do you know? Their detector detects some vibranium. Shortly after, though, the Na'vi, the Atlanteans, the Talokans, the Blue Seamen anyway. The Blue Seamen show up and attack the ship. They kill a bunch of the crew by singing to them, which is actually a pretty cool part. These guys just yeet themselves right into the ocean. Lake Bell escapes the ship on a helicopter and reports the attack to her superiors, but the helicopter is stopped in midair as the attack culminates with Namor throwing the chopper into the ocean. I assume that he kills Lake Bell and the pilot, but since we don't see her die, she probably didn't. We then jump to Wakanda, where Queen Ramonda has forced Shuri to join her in the brush for the 1-year anniversary of T'Challa's death. They're there to complete the ritual of burning the burial clothes to mark the end of the mourning period. But Shuri doesn't want to, and it's understandable. She's angry that he's gone, and she isn't ready to let go. So angry that she wants to kill everyone and burn the world down.
Right.
Loss is hard, man. Just maybe save those thoughts for therapy. Anger issues are a real thing. Speaking of anger issues, in that moment, Namor, Kukulkan, shows up in Wakanda to explain that Westerners are digging for vibranium in the ocean. How he got through the Wakandan bongo barrier? Namor powers, of course. Why the Wakandans don't attempt to improve the security of their waterways after this obvious breach? Well, just don't think about it. Anyway, Namor suggests an alliance with Wakanda against the Westerners that are seeking vibranium, and claims that since Wakanda exposed vibranium to the world, which they didn't, the world knew about vibranium before they knew Wakanda was real. But anyway, he claims it's Wakanda's fault that Westerners are looking for vibranium in his domain. Again, the entire ocean. And therefore, Wakanda needs to help him. So Namor shows them the vibranium detector and explains that they need to kill the person that created it.
Why?
You know, because it's not like anyone would ever be able to build another one, especially since they already fucking built one. What if it was built by a team of like 5,000 people? Even if they stole this thing completely assembled from Ray Ray, you're telling me that they didn't take it apart and study it before tossing it in the ocean? Also, Namor and his people attacked a US ship exactly where the vibranium was found. So there's no way they don't know exactly where that ship was when it was attacked, in which case they know where that vibranium is. So what's his goal in killing the vibranium detector's creator? At this point, for all he knows, these things are being mass-produced in the American Midwest by the dozens.
Not a great plan.
Shuri at least thinks to call her favorite colonizer and ask him about the vibranium detector's creator. And Martin Freeman is literally in this sequel to tell the Wakandans two things. One, that the device device was made by a single genius MIT student named Ray Ray Williams, aka Ironheart, and 2, that the US government believes Wakanda attacked the ship using the detector because it was looking for vibranium. And that's it. He will do nothing else of significance for the rest of the movie.
It's in the movie done.
Okoye is then tasked with finding Ray Ray, and she recommends that Shuri come along. Despite the Queen's initial objections, she allows it because she's desperate for Shuri to begin moving on from T'Challa's death. And so the two of them ship off to Boston.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Just the two of them. No backup. Not one other person for support in case something goes wrong. Not even one other member of the Dora Milaje.
Not a great plan.
Anyway, we cut to MIT campus where Ray Ray is hustling her fellow students as a programmer/engineer for hire. She's doing everyone's homework at MIT apparently, and the work demand is so high she's even established a website to manage it all.
Right.
Now, I just want to say right here that I actually didn't mind Ray Ray too much. I thought Dominique Thorne did a fine job. She provides some welcomed levity to this dirge of a movie. That being said, she's the exact same character as Shuri.
They're the same picture.
A quippy genius inventor. And to be honest, she has no real reason to be in this movie except to promote her show on Disney+. She ends up being relegated into a MacGuffin, the key to everything, getting dragged from scene to scene by the characters.
It's in the movie done.
So they approach MacGuffin in her dorm room to speak with her, and she freaks out, assuming that they're there to kidnap her. And I want to say 2 things about this scene. 1, why is she using a space heater to resist them? At least give her some kind of like homemade Iron Man blaster that she could have been using to keep them at bay for the moment. The second thing I want to say is that for as cringe as I thought this scene was personally, most of my theater audience was laughing throughout its duration.
Why?
It was probably one of the only scenes in this movie that was light enough in tone for everyone to just enjoy themselves, instead of feeling like they just paid $20 to attend a funeral. Ray Ray agrees to go with them. Well, actually, they coerce her, which, as we all know, isn't consent, but she takes them to her garage anyway, where she built the vibranium detector. And shortly after they get there,
a few moments later,
the FBI arrive, and the 3 of them have to escape. Okoye in a car, Shuri on a motorcycle, and Ray Ray in her Iron Man suit, which she wields with reckless abandon like a total psychopath. She manages to shoot a drone out of the sky that's pursuing them midair, which then crashes into a group of police cars, blowing them up. And absolutely killing people in the process. There is no way at least a few people weren't maimed in that explosion. Either she's so good that she planned it, or it's a horrific accident. Either way, it's kind of a stupid move for a genius to pull.
Not a great plan.
As a result of the explosion, Shuri and Ray Ray end up knocked unconscious on a bridge, leaving only Okoye to fight off Namor, or Kukulkan's people, who show up on whales in Boston.
It's in the movie done.
The whales are the absolute best part of this movie. The entrances that the Talo-Catlanteans have on them, it's over the top. Like, they want to be discreet, right? So jumping out of the water while riding whales is how you decide to do it in Boston?
Not a great plan.
Well, anyway, Okoye manages to fight off most of them and holds her own against some hammerhead guy, but she's eventually overpowered by a water balloon.
It's in the movie done.
She loses consciousness, and the Talo-Catlanteans she stabbed magically heal. How? I have no fucking clue. They just get up like zombies and run away.
Why?
And at this point in the movie, I was thinking, oh, it's like Curse of the Black Pearl. They're undead or cursed or something. But no, it's just not explained. Like, at least maybe have one of the characters pour water on their wounds and maybe then they heal up. Something?
What are the rules?
Whatever. Shuri wakes up in the nick of time, just as a Na'vi. Talokans are about to take Ray Ray to Namor in Atlantis. Talokan. And so she pleads with them to take her as well. And they agree, for some reason, even though they don't really have any reason to not just kill Ray Ray now and take Shuri. But they do, leaving Okoye to return to Wakanda and report what's happened.
It's in the movie done.
A few hours later, the colonizer shows up at the bridge where they were taken and finds Shuri's beads, stealing them from the crime scene. He runs into Val, who has an obligatory boss lady purple hair streak, and she asks him for a ride back to DC. Ross then uses the beads to communicate with Queen Ramonda, and eventually we'll find out that Val's bugged the beads to spy on Wakanda. It's a riveting plot that ultimately means jack all for the movie. Meanwhile, Okoye returns home. Good thing she woke up before the authorities arrived on that bridge.
Right.
And reports to the Queen how the trip went, and not great. And then she gets fired, which is one of the better plot developments in the whole movie. She fails at her job and is forced to face the consequences of her decisions. Actual character development. Okoye objects, but then the Queen's like, I mean, listen, first you betrayed my son and sided with Killmonger, and now you lost my daughter to the seamen. Let's pour one out to all the good daughters out there who have been lost to the seamen. Meanwhile, under the sea, Shuri and Ray Ray are being held captive by Namor in a water-free room. Why do the Taluk Atlanteans have this room? What fucking purpose would it possibly serve? Namor hates land dwellers and gets weak when he's out of water, and no one else in their society can breathe air, but they just decided, yeah, this room will be good for guests in and when we have them over to our hidden city. Moving on. Shuri then gets a long tour of not Atlantis, and Namor gives us the most convoluted and confusing backstory in the MCU to date, all while floating through his people's piss and shit. I mean, come on. They're probably just letting it rip. How could they have toilets in this society? Maybe that's how they came up with the rooms that don't have any water in them in the first place. Unfortunately, that's the one thing Namor doesn't talk about during his mini Disney Plus episode within the movie. So to summarize, he's 500 years old, was born in pre-colonial South America, ages slowly, is a mutant because his mom drank a magic flower, not the Black Panther one, when she was pregnant with him, and as a result, he can live in the water and on land. He can fly via his wings or fins that are on his feet, has super strength, and is mostly invulnerable, except for vibranium and space heaters. However, he's the only one of his people who are like this. The rest of them died after they drank the magic flower, or I guess they just fainted, and then turned blue. And then they woke up and just knew that they could only breathe underwater. Man, they must have figured that one out pretty quickly. So they went into the water. Oh, and all this happened because a Taluk Atlantean god of rain gave someone a vision about the upcoming colonization of South America. So that's the solution that the rain god gave them. Here, drink this flower, die, or something, become blue, and then have to live underwater for the rest of eternity. Colonization is bad, yes, that should be obvious, but living underwater for the rest of your life would be a little bit shitty too. Literally. Anyway, Namor is born and lives his life underwater, but is capable of living on the surface. After his mom dies, he returns to her home on land to bury her as per her last wishes, but finds Spanish colonizers doing colonizer things. He becomes enraged, and after the Spaniards attack him, he murders them all, including their slaves. It's really not clear whether he kills them or not. He hates all land dwellers after all, but because he is such a hateful young man, that's when he gets his name, Sin Namor, or Namor, or Cinnamon, boy without love.
It's in the movie done.
And ever since then, he's just been Namoring it up, aging super slowly and building just the best damn underwater empire on Earth. And to be fair, it's the only underwater empire on Earth. Then, at the end of his backstory dump, he gives Shuri a special bracelet that will have the solution to all of her problems later, and asks if she'll team up with him to help genocide everyone on land. Except Wakanda, of course.
Right.
Meanwhile, Queen Ramonda goes and asks T'Challa's girlfriend, Nakia, to find Shuri because Nakia is a scientist, and I guess because she's living in Haiti, so that's kind of close to Taluk Atlantis. They have it out with each other about Nakia missing T'Challa's funeral, and she's kind of like, nah, just couldn't be bothered. But you know what? Give her a break because she's a single mom, and it is hard to find a sitter for that long. So Nakia heads out and asks this one lady where Namor is, and when Nakia tells this woman, I've seen seen him too, the old lady just explains how to find Namor to her. How this woman knows what she means with that vague statement is anyone's guess, but it gets her the information she needs, and she heads out on her underwater motorcycle to Taloc Atlantis with a Jedi force push gun to save Shuri and Ray Ray.
It's in the movie done.
At the same time, Queen Ramonda summons Namor to bargain for the return of Shuri, and she decides that it's a good idea to threaten this sociopath who's holding her daughter 20 leagues under the sea and threatens to expose his people if he hurts her.
Not a great plan.
His response is, "I will fucking kill you in front of everyone." Reasonable. Meanwhile, during that conversation, in Taloc Atlantis, Nakia is rescuing Shuri and Ray Ray, but during the process, injures or kills Namor's child, girlfriend, sister, wife, friend? Who is this person to him? Well, anyway, she gets shot with the force push gun, and Shuri's like, "I have to use my beads to heal her. The shot could be lethal from that range." And Nakia's like, "Nah, it'll be fine." So then Namor comes home later and is talking to this woman, whoever she is, and she's dying, or is just badly injured. Again, I have no fucking clue what happened to her. But I assumed that she was pregnant with Namor's kid or something, and the force push gun killed the baby, because whatever they did to her is apparently enough for Namor to go and genocide downtown Wakanda. And by the way, she is not pregnant with a baby. And since Namor controls the ocean, he shows up in Wakanda, floods the place, and attacks.
Say goodbye to your precious dry land, for soon it will be wet. Wet!
And then M'Baku actually gets a moment to shine and be heroic. And man, it is just too bad that there is not a single strong, male, charismatic character in this franchise to take up the mantle of Black Panther.
We don't do that here.
Namor then targets Ramonda and Ray Ray with a water grenade in an attempt to kill two birds with one water grenade, which doesn't seem nearly as effective as just using your super strength and speed to murder them with your vibranium spear, but nah, the Submariner goes with the water balloon that floods the throne room and submerges Ray Ray and the Queen.
Not a great plan.
And he fails because Queen Ramonda manages to save Ray Ray from drowning, but ends up drowning herself as a result. Wasn't his original goal to kill Ray Ray? Unable to resuscitate her, Shuri is now very, very, very angry. And yes, while I acknowledge that this is a common trope in superhero movies, having the protagonist lose a loved one to grow into their role as a hero, this is now the second time in this movie that this has happened. Shuri loses her brother in the first act, and this sets her on a path of anger. Now, almost 2/3 of the way through the movie, she also loses her mom, just continuing on the same path of anger that she's already been on with a hint of revenge thrown in.
Vengeance has consumed you.
Yeah, it's more focused on Namor specifically instead of just burning down the world, I guess, but it still doesn't make it any less redundant. And it feels like a plot point that was left over in the script from when T'Challa was still in the movie, and they just never bothered to change it or take it out.
It's in the movie done.
So now Shuri has not one, but 2 meaningful deaths to inspire her. She'd have 3, but I guess she just doesn't care about her dad who got murdered a few years ago in Civil War. So they bury Queen Ramonda, no spaceships this time, and Wakanda moves themselves to the icy mountains of M'Baku's people, far away from the water. They have solved their problem and can now systematically retaliate against the Taloc Atlanteans slowly by using their spaceships and, apparently, submarines. Nah, instead Shuri's so hellbent on getting revenge on Namor that she insists on bringing the fight directly to him and his people in the ocean of all places. M'Baku, however, warns that after seeing Namor fighting alongside his people, he realizes that the Taloc Atlanteans worship him as a god. Cuckoo Khan. And therefore, the war cannot be won by killing him. M'Baku, you really deserved so much better in this movie.
You blew it!
The final act of this movie gets underway with, of course, an obligatory montage. Shuri gives Ray Ray access to her lab to build a more advanced Iron Man or Iron Heart suit, while Shuri herself gets back to work on recreating the synthetic heart-shaped herb. Okoye is even given her own Iron Man suit, the Midnight Angel, but then she isn't even shown training to use it, which could have been a nice scene. Ray Ray showing Okoye how to operate a suit like this, Okoye showing Ray Ray some actual combat moves. Who knows? Maybe it's in the deleted scenes. This thing was long enough anyway. But it's these kind of character development moments that this movie was seriously lacking in. By the end of the montage, Shuri manages to successfully recreate the heart-shaped herb thanks to the bracelet that Namor luckily gave her. She ingests it, but much to her surprise, she doesn't find her brother T'Challa in the ancestral plane. Instead, she finds Wallace.
Where's Wallace at? Where the fuck is Wallace?
I mean, Killmonger. And at this time, I do want to say that the parts of this movie about Shuri's grief, her anger, and wanting revenge were some of the best stuff in the whole story. It's a good theme that's belabored with a boring script. So Shuri finds Killmonger in the ancestral plane, and he claims that right now it's because she most closely aligns with his values as opposed to her brother's. She needs to be ruthless like he was, and not honorable like T'Challa. He cautions her about the path of revenge, and challenges her to be honest about her feelings.
A few moments later.
Shuri awakens, and the synthetic herb has worked. She now has the power of the Black Panther, which I guess includes becoming inexplicably awesome at fighting. She's about to go toe-to-toe with Namor in the final battle, and I get that she's now strong and fast and has awesome reflexes as Black Panther, but does it actually give her a bunch of combat experience instantly? I guess so. Maybe it's all just downloaded into your brain via the herb through your ancestors.
Right.
Try not to think about it too hard. Shuri then returns to the Wakandan Council as their savior and protector, the Black Panther. So with the Black Panther restored, the Wakandans plan to confront Namor again on the ocean for some reason. Like, if Namor was so angry at you and was hellbent on revenge, then why not plan to fight him in Wakanda? Maybe out on a giant field, like the one from Infinity War that didn't have any water on it. But instead, they decide to fight him out on the ocean because they plan on trapping Namor and drying him out. And you know, this is literally the plot of an episode of Smallville.
Water.
Hey, never underestimate the destructive power of a space heater that's been left on, kids. And so the Wakandans head out to the ocean. Yep, they meet the water people out on the water to fight the water people. And the Wakandans don't seem to have an air force or any of their spaceships, which would be super useful in this situation. They've just brought the one along for drying Namor out. Okay?
Not a great plan.
But hey, they brought a bunch of Iron Man suits, so who needs spaceships? And then we get to see the whales again. The Talokatlanteans get launched onto the Wakandan battleship. Oh, the Wakandans have a battleship, by the way. They get launched onto this battleship with whale tails. Literally, orca whales slingshot the Talokatlanteans onto this ship using their tails. It's amazing. So apparently, whales beat Iron Man suits, and the Talokatlanteans begin to overtake the Wakandans in their own movie. I mean, these people just heal from vibranium spear wounds, so what the hell are the Wakandans ultimately supposed to do anyway?
What are the rules?
Meanwhile, Shuri's captured Namor in the ship and is having herself a good old-fashioned fish fry. But Namor decides to just break the hell out of there, which Shuri didn't think of, I guess, even though she's supposed to be a genius. Maybe that herb's going to her head. Or maybe if she had actually physically engaged him or had some kind of tech device to harm Namor, she could actually manage to dry him out. The guy can hear conversations on land while he's underwater. Maybe there's a chance his hearing is sensitive. Blast some music, try to incapacitate him. Something, but instead, he ends up breaking out and crashing the ship before she's able to dry him out.
Not a great plan.
They crash onto the beach, fight, Namor stabs Shuri through the chest. She's fine, by the way. Nanotechnology or something.
Right.
Doesn't even need a bead in her back to fix the absolutely broken spine that she has. And instead of killing her, Namor declares that he needs
Water.
and just walks away from her.
Not a great plan.
Shuri then pulls the spear out of her chest, and damn, it is a good thing that it missed her heart, her spine, and her lungs. She attacks Namor again and manages to burn him with the jet engine of the spaceship that had crashed on the beach behind them. Just reading that sentence is confusing, but that's what happened in this movie. Shuri ultimately shows Namor mercy and decides not to kill him after a vision from Mom.
Why?
Do Black Panthers just like regularly get visions from their ancestors, like Force Ghosts in Star Wars? I guess so. So anyway, Shuri tells Namor that Wakanda will protect the Talakitlanteans and their vibranium on the condition that they don't kill Ray Ray. Now Wakanda and the Talakitlanteans are allies.
Right.
And the few people that are left in the Wakandan army are spared at the last minute from being murdered by the Talakitlanteans in cold blood. They seem like a really chill group of people to be friends with. Finally, we see the colonizer has been arrested by Val for treason against the United States for working with Wakanda in secret. But he's immediately freed from imprisonment, so who gives a shit?
It's in the movie done.
M'Baku challenges to be king of Wakanda in Shuri's absence.
It's in the movie done.
And we find Shuri in Haiti visiting Nakia. She's come to burn her mourning clothes in order to mark the end of her grief, and we get a final closing sequence of Chadwick Boseman. Shuri, now having embraced her loss, finding peace. Then there's a mid-credit scene with the new Prince T'Challa, Jr.
It's in the movie done.
The end. It's a nice final scene that serves as the second slice of rye bread on the other side of this shit sandwich of a movie. Look, I know I may be a little hard on Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever, or BP2 WTF as I'm calling it in this review. I acknowledge that Black Panther 2 was given a pretty crappy task that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Having to move forward with an extremely anticipated sequel after the loss of the star who helped make the first one such a huge success that it was in the first place is a massive problem to have. Should you move forward respectfully and recast the role? Would that have been better? Or do you treat it the same way that they did, close to real life events, incorporating the grief of Chadwick's death while barely including T'Challa in the actual events of the story? We'll never really know. But as I mentioned at the start of this review, Wakanda Forever's biggest problem is that the story is about the loss of its protagonist instead of being a story about a protagonist going through something, and that absence of its protagonist is felt throughout the story with an entertainment value that plummets the longer the story drags on. Shuri was a fine character as she was, a quippy scientist inventor who makes cool new tech that serves her well in combat, but she's just not a headlining character. And she was a bad choice for the new Black Panther. And while Shuri can clearly handle herself, she has no formal training or experience in hand-to-hand combat, or warfare for that matter. Why not choose an established warrior character from the franchise as the new Black Panther?
The Black Panther has been the protector of Wakanda for generations. A mantle passed from warrior to warrior.
Like M'Baku or Okoye, because let's be real, either one of them would have filled that suit out way better than Shuri did. Or, better yet, you've synthesized the heart-shaped herb, so why not give it to every willing participant in Wakanda? Why the hell not? Then just put the rest of them in Iron Man suits. Nah. Instead of an army of Black Panthers, we got a near 3-hour funeral dirge. And like a lot of real-life funerals, this movie is sentimental but depressing, and ultimately not something most people are going to look back on fondly or recommend to their friends.